What would you do if someone told you that you didn't belong somewhere? That people like you weren't welcome? That your very presence was somehow wrong? Rebecca Sterling thought she knew exactly what kind of person belonged at Manhattan's most exclusive charity gala. She had standards. She had a reputation to protect. And when a man in worn work boots and a faded flannel shirt tried to enter her carefully curated event, she knew exactly what to do. People like you don't belong here, she told him, her voice cutting through the marble lobby like a blade. She called security. She had him physically removed. She made sure everyone watching knew that she was the kind of person who maintained proper standards. What Rebecca didn't know was that the man she was humiliating, the man she was having dragged out like a common criminal, was about to change her life forever. Not in the way she expected, not in the way she wanted, but in a way that would strip away everything she thought she knew about herself and the world she lived in. Because sometimes, the people we judge the harshest are the ones who hold the most power. Sometimes, the person you think doesn't belong is exactly the person who can decide whether you belong anywhere at all. Rebecca Sterling was about to learn that lesson the hard way. And by the time she realized her mistake, it would be far too late to take it back. The security guard at the Four Seasons Hotel looked down at the crumpled invitation in his hand, then back at the man standing before him. James Mitchell stood there in work boots, so worn the steel toes were showing through the leather. His flannel shirt had seen better days, probably better decades. The sleeves were rolled up, revealing calloused hands that spoke of years of hard labor. "Sir, I think there's been some mistake," the guard said, his voice dripping with practiced politeness that barely concealed his disdain. "This is a private event." James took the invitation back, smoothing out the wrinkles with his weathered fingers. "No mistake. I'm on the list." The Manhattan Elite Children's Foundation Gala was the social event of the year. Every billionaire, celebrity, and power player in New York would be there. The ballroom beyond the marble lobby glittered with crystal chandeliers and the soft murmur of refined conversation. Through the glass doors, James could see men in $1,000 tuxedos and women draped in diamonds that cost more than most people's houses. And here he was, looking like he'd just stepped off a construction site. Which, in a way, he had. The guard was still staring at him when a sharp voice cut through the air like a blade. "What exactly is going on here?" Rebecca Sterling swept across the lobby with the confidence of someone who owned everything she looked at. Her silver gown probably cost more than most people made in a year. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a perfect chignon, not a strand out of place. Everything about her screamed money, power, and the absolute certainty that she was better than everyone else in the room. She was the event coordinator, the wife of prominent real estate developer Michael Sterling, and she ruled New York's social scene with an iron fist wrapped in a designer glove. "Ma'am, this gentleman claims to have an invitation," the guard said, relief evident in his voice. He was clearly happy to pass this problem up the chain. Rebecca's ice-blue eyes swept over James from head to toe. The look she gave him could have frozen the Hudson River. "An invitation? To this event?" "That's right," James said calmly. He held out the invitation again. Rebecca didn't even look at it. "Sir, this is a $10,000 per plate charity event. The guest list was carefully curated months ago. I personally reviewed every single name. Then you'll remember approving mine. I think I would remember approving someone." She paused, looking him up and down again. "Someone like you." The words hung in the air like a challenge. James felt something shift in his chest, a familiar tightness he hadn't felt in years. It was the same feeling he'd had as a kid when the rich kids at school would look at his second-hand clothes and whisper behind his back. "People like me?" he asked quietly. "Come now," Rebecca said, her voice taking on the tone you'd use with a confused child. "Look around you. Look at this place. Look at these people. This is the Four Seasons, not some roadside diner. We have standards here." Through the glass doors, James could see the charity auction beginning. Children from the very foundation this event was supporting had created artwork that would be sold to the highest bidders. Kids who reminded him of himself at that age. Kids who needed help. Kids who deserved better. "Maybe there's been a misunderstanding," James said. "Why don't you check your list again?" Rebecca's laugh was like breaking glass. "Oh, I don't need to check any list. I know everyone who belongs at this event, and you." She gestured at his clothes. "You clearly don't belong here." The security guard was nodding along, and James noticed other staff members starting to gather. A small crowd of early arrivals had stopped their conversations to watch the show. "Ma'am," the guard said, "should I call the police?" "That won't be necessary," Rebecca said, pulling out her phone. "Security will handle this." "Wait," James said, reaching into his back pocket. "Let me just show you." "Sir, keep your hands where I can see them," the guard barked, his hand moving toward his radio. "I'm just getting my ID," James said, but Rebecca was already backing away. "Oh my God," she said loudly, her voice carrying across the lobby. "He's reaching for something." "Security! Security!" Within seconds, 3 hotel security guards appeared. They were big men in black suits, and they surrounded James like he was a dangerous criminal instead of a man trying to attend a charity event. "Ma'am, what's the situation?" the head of security asked. "This man is trying to crash our event," Rebecca announced, her voice pitched perfectly to carry to every corner of the lobby. "He claims to have an invitation, but obviously that's impossible. I mean, look at him." More guests had stopped to watch. James could hear them whispering, could feel their eyes on him. He saw a woman in a red dress lean over to her companion and whisper something behind her hand. The man laughed. "Sir, you need to leave," the head of security said. "This is private property." "I have an invitation," James said again. "I'm on the guest list." "Let me see it," the guard said. James handed over the invitation. The guard looked at it, frowned, then showed it to Rebecca. "This is clearly a fake," Rebecca announced without even looking at it closely. "The paper is wrong, the font is wrong, everything about it is wrong. Do you think we're stupid?" She held the invitation up like evidence in a trial. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is what desperation looks like. This man obviously saw our event in the newspaper and thought he could just walk in here and get a free meal." The whispers got louder. James could hear snippets of conversation. "Homeless man. How did he get past the front desk? Someone should call the police." "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to come with us," the head of security said, reaching for James's arm. "Don't touch me," James said, his voice still calm but with an edge that made the guard pause. "I'm not trespassing. I'm an invited guest." "An invited guest?" Rebecca's voice rose to a pitch that could shatter champagne glasses. "You're wearing work boots to a black tie event. You smell like—" She wrinkled her nose, "like sawdust and motor oil. You probably haven't showered in a week." The crowd was getting bigger. James could see people taking out their phones, though whether to call for help or to record the spectacle, he couldn't tell. "Rebecca, what's going on?" A new voice joined the conversation. Thomas Whitmore, the chairman of the charity board, appeared at Rebecca's elbow. He was a distinguished man in his 70s, with silver hair and kind eyes. "Thomas, thank God you're here," Rebecca said, her voice suddenly sweet as honey. "This man is trying to crash our event. He's claiming to have an invitation, but obviously—" Thomas looked at James, and something flickered in his eyes. Recognition? Concern? James couldn't tell. "May I see the invitation?" Thomas asked quietly. Rebecca handed it over with a flourish. "You'll see it's clearly a fake. The paper quality alone." Thomas studied the invitation carefully. His eyebrows rose slightly. "This appears to be legitimate." "What?" Rebecca snatched the invitation back. "That's impossible." "Thomas, look at him. Does he look like he belongs at a $10,000 charity event?" "Perhaps appearances can be deceiving," Thomas said carefully. "Not this deceiving," Rebecca snapped. "I don't care what some piece of paper says. I know who belongs at this event and who doesn't. And people like him." She pointed at James like he was something unpleasant she'd found on her shoe. "People like him don't belong here." The lobby had gone completely quiet. Everyone was watching now, waiting to see what would happen next. "People like me," James repeated, his voice so quiet it was barely audible. "Yes," Rebecca said, her chin raised defiantly. "People like you. This is a gathering of New York's elite, not some soup kitchen. We have standards. We have a reputation to maintain. And we cannot have—" She gestured at his entire appearance. "This disrupting our event." The security guards were getting restless. The head of security looked like he was waiting for orders. "Ma'am," he said to Rebecca, "what do you want us to do?" "I want him gone," Rebecca said. "I want him escorted out of this building and told never to come back. And I want it done now, before any more of our guests have to see this spectacle." "But the invitation appears to be real," Thomas said weakly. "Thomas, with all due respect, I don't care if he has a golden ticket from Willy Wonka himself. This man does not belong at our event. Period." James looked around the lobby at all the faces staring at him. Some looked embarrassed, others looked amused, a few looked genuinely concerned. But nobody spoke up. Nobody said a word in his defense. "Fine," James said finally. "I'll leave." "Good," Rebecca said, her voice sharp with triumph. "Officers, please escort Mr." She paused, realizing she didn't know his name. "Please escort this gentleman out of the building. And make sure he understands that he's not welcome back." Two security guards moved to either side of James. He didn't resist as they took his arms, but he kept his dignity intact as they began to walk him toward the door. "Wait," Thomas called out. "This isn't right. If he has an invitation." "Thomas, I'm handling this," Rebecca said firmly. "This is exactly why we have security protocols. We can't just let anyone walk in here off the street." As they reached the door, James turned back to look at Rebecca. She was standing there in her silver gown, surrounded by her glittering crowd, looking like she'd just conquered a small country. "You know what?" James said, his voice carrying clearly across the lobby. "You're absolutely right." Rebecca looked surprised. "I'm sorry. You're right. I don't belong here. Not with people like you." Something in his tone made her pause. For just a moment, uncertainty flickered across her face. "I hope you enjoy your evening," James continued. "I hope you raise a lot of money for those children, because they deserve better than this." And with that, the security guards escorted him out into the New York night. But as they walked away, James reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a business card. He dropped it on the sidewalk where it fluttered in the evening breeze. The card was simple, elegant, embossed with just a name and a phone number. James Mitchell, CEO, Mitchell Industries. Rebecca never saw it fall. Inside the ballroom, the auction was beginning. Children's artwork was being sold to the highest bidders, raising money for kids who needed help, kids who deserved a chance, kids who, in a way, reminded James of himself. But Rebecca Sterling was too busy accepting congratulations from her social circle to think about any of that. She was the hero of the evening, the woman who had protected their exclusive event from an unwanted intruder. She had no idea that she had just made the biggest mistake of her life. As the evening wore on, the charity auction raised over $2 million. It was a successful night by any measure, and Rebecca basked in the praise of her peers. She went to bed that night feeling proud of herself, secure in her position, confident in her choices. She had no way of knowing that 48 hours later, her entire world would come crashing down. 2 days later, Rebecca Sterling was having the perfect morning. She sat in her penthouse apartment overlooking Central Park, sipping her imported coffee and reading the society pages. The New York Times had given the charity gala a glowing review, and her name was mentioned 3 times as the brilliant organizer who had made the event such a success. Her husband Michael was at the dining table, hunched over his laptop and talking rapidly into his phone. He'd been making calls all morning, something about a big real estate deal that was supposed to close today. Rebecca wasn't paying much attention. Michael's business dealings were his concern, not hers. "Yes, I understand," Michael was saying into the phone. "But surely there's been some mistake. We had a verbal agreement. We shook hands on this." Rebecca glanced over at him. His face was flushed, and there was a thin sheen of sweat on his forehead despite the air conditioning. Strange. Michael was usually so calm and collected in his business dealings. "What do you mean he's not taking your calls?" Michael's voice was getting louder. "I don't care if he's busy. This is a $100 million deal. You find a way to get him on the phone." Now Rebecca was paying attention. $100 million? That was more than Michael usually dealt with. She set down her coffee cup and looked at him more closely. "Fine," Michael said, ending the call with more force than necessary. "Fine. We'll figure this out." "Darling, is everything all right?" Rebecca asked, using the sweet tone that had charmed her way through New York society for 15 years. Michael looked up at her, and for the first time in their marriage, Rebecca saw something in his eyes that scared her. Fear. Real, genuine fear. "Rebecca," he said slowly, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to think very carefully before you answer." "Of course, darling." "What is it?" "The other night at the gala, did anything unusual happen? Any problems with the guest list or security?" Rebecca laughed, relieved. "Oh, that. Nothing important. We had some vagrant try to crash the party, but I handled it. Security escorted him out." "What?" The color drained from Michael's face. "A vagrant? What did he look like?" "I don't know, ordinary. Working clothes, Looked like he hadn't seen the inside of a shower in weeks. He had some fake invitation and was trying to get into the event. I had him thrown out, naturally. Michael's hands were shaking as he reached for his phone. What was his name? I have no idea. I didn't ask. Some nobody trying to get a free meal, obviously. Rebecca, Michael's voice was barely a whisper. What did this man look like? Exactly. I told you, working clothes. Flannel shirt, work boots. Dark hair, maybe in his 40s. Honestly, Michael, why does it matter? He's gone. Michael was frantically scrolling through his phone, searching for something. When he found it, his face went completely white. Oh God, he whispered. Oh God, no. Michael, you're scaring me. What's wrong? Instead of answering, Michael turned his phone toward her. On the screen was a photo from a business magazine. The headline read, James Mitchell, from construction worker to billionaire. The photo showed a man in an expensive suit, but Rebecca recognized the face immediately. It was the same man she'd had thrown out of the gala 2 nights ago. That's him, she said, confused. That's the man who tried to crash our party. But this says he's a billionaire. That's impossible. Michael was staring at her like she'd just told him she'd burned down the city. Rebecca, do you have any idea what you've done? I don't understand. This must be some mistake. That man was a vagrant. He was dressed like a construction worker. Because he was a construction worker, Michael said, his voice hollow. James Mitchell started as a construction worker. He built his empire from nothing. He's worth $31 billion. Rebecca, $31 billion. The room started spinning. Rebecca grabbed the edge of the table to steady herself. That's impossible. If he's so rich, why was he dressed like that? Because that's who he is, Michael said. He's famous for it. He still dresses like he did when he was poor. He drives a pickup truck to board meetings. He's known for testing people, for seeing how they treat him when they think he's nobody. The coffee cup slipped from Rebecca's fingers and shattered on the marble floor. The sound echoed through the apartment like a gunshot. Michael, you're not making sense. If he's so rich, why would he want to come to our little charity event? Our little charity event. Michael's voice cracked. Rebecca, do you know what the Mitchell Foundation does? James Mitchell has donated over $5 billion to children's charities. $5 billion. He probably wanted to make a donation. Rebecca's legs felt weak. She sank into her chair, her mind reeling. But he looked so what? So poor. So ordinary. Rebecca, that man probably has more money than half the people at that gala combined. The phone rang. Michael answered it immediately, his voice desperate. Hello? Yes, this is Michael Sterling. Have you heard back from Mr. Mitchell's office? Rebecca watched her husband's face fall as he listened to the response. I see, Michael said quietly. And there's no way to. I understand. Thank you. He hung up and looked at Rebecca with eyes that had aged 10 years in 10 minutes. That was our lawyer, he said. The Mitchell Industries deal is off. Completely off. They won't return our calls. They won't take our meetings. They won't even acknowledge that we exist. But surely if we explained. Rebecca began. Explain what? That my wife had their CEO physically thrown out of a charity event? That she humiliated him in front of a crowd of people? That she told him he didn't belong there? Rebecca's mind was racing, trying to process what she was hearing. Michael, one deal isn't the end of the world. You have other clients, other projects. Michael laughed, but there was no humor in it. Other clients? Rebecca, we don't have other clients. Not anymore. The Mitchell deal wasn't just a deal, it was the deal. It was going to save us. Save us from what? From bankruptcy. The word hit Rebecca like a physical blow. What? We're broke, Rebecca. We have been for months. The real estate market crashed, our investments went south, and we've been hemorrhaging money for over a year. The Mitchell deal was our lifeline. It was the only thing standing between us and complete financial ruin. Rebecca stared at her husband, her mouth open. That's impossible. We have money. We have investments. We have this apartment, the house in the Hamptons, all mortgaged, Michael said. Everything we own is mortgaged to the hilt. The credit cards are maxed out. The bank accounts are empty. We've been living on borrowed time and borrowed money, and now the bills are coming due. The room was silent except for the sound of Rebecca's breathing, which was getting faster and shallower. How much do we owe? She asked. $47 million. Rebecca felt like she was going to be sick. 47 million? Michael, how is that possible? Bad investments, market crashes, and a lifestyle we couldn't afford. I kept thinking I could fix it, That one big deal would make everything right. And then James Mitchell came along, and it seemed like a miracle. His company was looking to buy distressed properties, and we had plenty of those. It was perfect. But surely if we call him, if we explain, Rebecca, I've been trying to call him for 2 days. His people won't even put me through to his secretary. We're blacklisted. Completely and utterly blacklisted. Rebecca stood up on shaky legs and walked to the window. Central Park stretched out below her, green and peaceful and completely oblivious to the disaster that was unfolding in her penthouse. There has to be something we can do, she said. Some way to fix this. Fix what? The fact that you treated a billionaire like he was trash? The fact that you had him physically removed from a charity event? Rebecca, do you have any idea how this looks? James Mitchell is one of the most respected businessmen in the country. He's a philanthropist, a humanitarian. And you had him thrown out like he was some kind of criminal. Rebecca turned back to her husband. I didn't know. How was I supposed to know? You weren't supposed to know, Michael said. That's the point. You were supposed to treat him with basic human decency regardless of what he looked like or how much money you thought he had. You were supposed to act like a civilized person. Don't you dare lecture me about being civilized, Rebecca snapped. I was protecting our event. I was maintaining our standards. Our standards? Michael's voice rose. Rebecca, our standards just cost us everything we own and everything we'll ever own. Our standards just destroyed our lives. The phone rang again. Michael answered it with the enthusiasm of a man answering his own death warrant. Hello? Yes, this is Michael Sterling. What? When? Are you sure? Rebecca watched her husband's face cycle through several emotions. Confusion, disbelief, and finally, absolute horror. I see, he said quietly. Thank you for letting me know. He hung up and looked at Rebecca with eyes that were completely empty. That was the bank, he said. James Mitchell just bought our mortgage company. What does that mean? It means he owns our debt. All of it. The penthouse, the Hampton house, the office building, everything. He can call it all in whenever he wants. Rebecca felt the world tilting around her. He can do that. He can do whatever he wants. He's got more money than God, and apparently, he's decided to use it to destroy us. But that's illegal, isn't it? He can't just buy our debts to get revenge. It's not illegal. It's business. Cold, calculated, perfectly legal business. Rebecca sank back into her chair. How long do we have? I don't know. Could be days, could be weeks. But Rebecca, when this is over, we'll have nothing. No home, no money, no credit, no friends. Nothing. Our friends wouldn't abandon us, Rebecca said weakly. Michael laughed bitterly. Our friends? Rebecca, we don't have friends. We have social acquaintances who tolerate us because we're rich. When word gets out that we're broke, when the society pages start writing about our bankruptcy, when we can't afford to attend their parties or donate to their charities, how long do you think it will take for those friends to disappear? Rebecca knew he was right. She'd seen it happen before. In their social circle, money was everything. Without it, you were nothing. Maybe we could sell something, she said desperately. The jewelry, the art collection, the cars. All of it's mortgaged or leased. We don't actually own anything, Rebecca. We've been living a lie for months. The apartment felt like it was closing in around her. The marble floors, the crystal chandeliers, the imported furniture, all of it suddenly felt like a museum exhibit from someone else's life. I need some air, Rebecca said, standing up. Where are you going? For a walk. I need to think. Rebecca, we need to figure out what we're going to do. We need to make plans. Plans for what? You just told me we've lost everything. What kind of plans can we make? Michael looked at her for a long moment. Plans for what comes next. Plans for how we're going to survive. Plans for how we're going to rebuild. Rebuild. Rebecca's voice was hollow. Michael, I'm 45 years old. I've never had a job in my life. I don't know how to do anything except plan parties and shop for clothes. How am I supposed to rebuild? I don't know, Michael said quietly. But we're going to have to figure it out. Rebecca walked to the door, then stopped. Do you think he'll really take everything? I think James Mitchell is a very successful businessman who got where he is by being tough and smart and ruthless when he needs to be. And I think you gave him every reason to be ruthless with us. I was just trying to protect our event. No, Michael said. You were trying to protect your image. You were trying to make sure that none of your society friends saw you associating with someone you thought was beneath you. And now it's cost us everything. Rebecca left the apartment and walked out into the New York morning. The city bustled around her, oblivious to her personal catastrophe. People hurried past on the sidewalk, going about their normal lives, completely unaware that her world had just ended. She thought about James Mitchell, about the look in his eyes when she told him he didn't belong at their event. She'd been so sure, so confident in her judgment. He'd looked exactly like what she'd expected a gatecrasher to look like. But that was the point, wasn't it? He'd been testing them, testing her, seeing how she would treat someone she thought was poor and powerless. And she'd failed spectacularly. As she walked down Fifth Avenue, Rebecca realized that in trying to protect her world from people she thought didn't belong, she'd destroyed it completely. And the worst part was, she had no one to blame but herself. Behind her, in the penthouse that would soon belong to someone else, Michael Sterling sat at his dining table and stared at his phone. He was trying to work up the courage to call their lawyer, to begin the process of declaring bankruptcy, to start the long, humiliating journey of losing everything they'd built. But first, he had to figure out how to tell his wife that their nightmare was just beginning. 6 months later, Rebecca Sterling stood in the lobby of the Meridian Tower, clutching a mop and a bucket of cleaning supplies. The marble floors that had once seemed so elegant now just looked like an endless expanse of surface that needed to be scrubbed. Her back ached from hours of bending over, and her hands were raw from the harsh cleaning chemicals. The uniform she wore was a far cry from the designer gowns that used to fill her closet. Navy blue polyester pants and a matching shirt with elite cleaning services embroidered on the pocket. Her hair, once perfectly styled by Manhattan's most exclusive salon, was now pulled back in a simple ponytail. Her nails, which had once been manicured weekly, were short and practical. She'd been working the night shift at the cleaning company for 3 months now. It was the only job she could find after the bankruptcy. No one in her former social circle would hire her for anything, and she had no actual skills beyond organizing parties and looking good in expensive clothes. The bankruptcy had been swift and brutal. James Mitchell had called in every debt, foreclosed on every property, and seized every asset. The penthouse, the Hampton house, the cars, the jewelry, the art collection, all of it gone. They'd been left with nothing but the clothes on their backs and a mountain of legal bills. Michael had found work as a construction supervisor for a company that, ironically, was a subcontractor for Mitchell Industries. He was making a fraction of what he used to earn, but at least he had skills that translated to honest work. Rebecca had not been so fortunate. She pushed her cart down the hallway, her footsteps echoing in the empty corridor. The building was mostly dark at this hour, with only security lights providing illumination. She preferred the night shift. It meant she didn't have to see the people who worked in these offices during the day, people who might recognize her from her former life. The elevator dinged, and Rebecca looked up to see who was coming down so late. Her blood turned to ice when she saw the familiar figure step out. James Mitchell looked exactly the same as he had 6 months ago, except now he was wearing a perfectly tailored suit instead of work clothes. His hair was neatly styled, and he carried himself with the quiet confidence of a man who owned half of Manhattan. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Rebecca stood frozen, her hand gripping the handle of her mop bucket so tightly her knuckles were white. James looked at her with an expression she couldn't read. "Mrs. Sterling," he said finally, his voice calm and neutral. "Mr. Mitchell," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "I own this building now," he said. "I bought it last month." Rebecca nodded, not trusting herself to speak. Of course he owned it. He seemed to own everything these days. "I know you work here," James continued. "I've known for 2 months. Are you going to have me fired?" Rebecca asked, hating how small her voice sounded. "That depends," James said. "Are you going to tell me I don't belong here?" The words hit Rebecca like a physical blow. She remembered saying those exact words to him 6 months ago, remembered the look in his eyes when she'd had him thrown out of the gala. "I'm sorry," she said, and to her surprise, she meant it. "I'm so sorry for what I did to you." James studied her for a long moment. "Are you sorry for what you did, or are you sorry for what it cost you?" Rebecca considered the question. 6 months ago, she would have given him the answer she thought he wanted to hear. But she was too tired, too beaten down, too broken to lie anymore. "Both," she said honestly. "I'm sorry for treating you the way I did. It was wrong, and it was cruel. But I'm also sorry for what it cost me and my husband. We lost everything." "Yes," James said. "You did. Did you plan this?" Rebecca asked. Did you deliberately dress down that night to test us? I dress the way I dress because it reminds me where I came from, James replied. But yes, I've learned over the years that how people treat someone they think is poor tells you everything you need to know about their character. And I failed your test. You failed as a human being, James corrected. The test was just the measurement. Rebecca felt tears welling up in her eyes. I know I did. I've had 6 months to think about it, to realize what kind of person I was. What kind of person I still am. What kind of person are you now? James asked. Rebecca looked down at her uniform, at her raw hands, at the mop bucket that had become her constant companion. I'm nobody. I'm a middle-aged woman with no skills, no money, no friends, and no future. I'm exactly the kind of person I used to look down on. And how does that feel? Terrible, Rebecca said. And for the first time in months, she was completely honest. It feels terrible. Every day I wake up and remember that this is my life now, that I'm never going to get back what I lost, that I'm going to spend the rest of my life scrubbing floors and cleaning toilets and being invisible to everyone around me. James nodded slowly. Good, good. Rebecca looked up at him in surprise. You're finally understanding what it feels like to be dismissed, to be treated like you don't matter, to be invisible. You're learning what it's like to be on the other side of the equation. Is that what you wanted? To teach me a lesson? I wanted to destroy you, James said simply. When you had me thrown out of that gala, when you humiliated me in front of all those people, when you told me I didn't belong there, I wanted to make you pay. And I did. Rebecca wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. You certainly did. The question is, James continued, what happens now? What do you mean? I mean, what are you going to do with the rest of your life? Are you going to spend it feeling sorry for yourself and cleaning floors? Or are you going to do something meaningful? Rebecca stared at him. I don't understand. I'm offering you a choice, James said. You can continue working here, cleaning my buildings, being invisible and forgotten. Or you can come work for me. Work for you? Doing what? I'm opening a new facility. A homeless shelter and job training center. I need someone to run it. Someone who understands what it's like to lose everything. Someone who knows what it means to be desperate. Rebecca's mouth fell open. You want me to run a homeless shelter? I want you to help people who are exactly where you are now. People who have lost everything. People who feel invisible. People who need a second chance. Why would you offer me this? Because revenge is only satisfying for so long, James said. I've destroyed your old life completely. But now I'm curious to see what you'll do with a new one. Rebecca looked at him suspiciously. What's the catch? The catch is that you'll be living in the same facility as the people you're helping. You'll eat the same food, sleep in the same kind of room, follow the same rules. You'll be one of them, not above them. And if I say no, then you go back to mopping floors until you're too old to work, and then you become one of the homeless people you would have been helping. Rebecca was quiet for a long moment. Why are you doing this? Because I was homeless once, James said. When I was 16, my parents died in a car accident. I had no relatives, no money, nowhere to go. I spent 2 years living on the streets, sleeping in shelters, being treated like garbage by people who thought I was worthless. I didn't know. Very few people do. But I remember what it was like. I remember how it felt to be invisible, to have people look right through me like I didn't exist. I remember what it was like to be hungry and cold and scared and completely alone. How did you get out? A construction foreman named Bill Murphy gave me a job. He didn't care that I was homeless or that I smelled bad or that I was wearing the same clothes I'd been wearing for 3 weeks. He just saw that I was willing to work hard, and he gave me a chance. Rebecca felt something shift inside her chest. And now you want to give me a chance? I want to give you a purpose. You can spend the rest of your life being bitter about what you lost, or you can spend it helping other people who are going through the same thing. I don't know anything about running a homeless shelter. You'll learn. You'll have help, and you'll have training. But most importantly, you'll have perspective. You'll understand what these people are going through because you've been there yourself. Rebecca looked around the empty hallway, at the marble floors she'd been scrubbing for months, at the mop bucket that had become a symbol of her downfall. What about my husband? He can keep his job, or he can come work for me too. I'm always looking for good construction supervisors, and from what I hear, he's been doing excellent work. You've been watching us. I've been watching you, James corrected. I wanted to see what you would do when you lost everything, whether you would learn and grow, or just become bitter and angry. And what did you see? I saw a woman who was finally learning what it means to be human. Rebecca felt tears streaming down her face. I don't deserve this. I don't deserve a second chance. Nobody deserves anything, James said. But sometimes we get chances anyway. The question is what we do with them. Rebecca thought about the last 6 months. The humiliation, the desperation, the long nights scrubbing floors and wondering how her life had gone so wrong. She thought about all the people she'd dismissed over the years, all the times she'd looked down on someone because they didn't meet her standards. If I take this job, she said slowly, if I try to help these people, how do I know I won't just mess it up again? How do I know I won't go back to being the person I was before? You don't, James said. But that's the point. Every day you'll have to choose who you want to be. Every day you'll have to decide whether to treat people with dignity or with disdain. Every day you'll have to earn the right to be the person you want to become. Rebecca nodded slowly. When do I start? Right now, James said. There's a woman in the lobby. Her name is Patricia, and she's 62 years old. She lost her job last month, got evicted from her apartment last week, and she's been sleeping in her car for 3 days. She's scared, she's proud, and she's trying very hard not to cry. What do you want me to do? I want you to go talk to her. I want you to tell her that you understand what she's going through. I want you to help her. But I'm not trained. I don't know what to say. You know exactly what to say, James said. You know because you've been where she is. You know what it's like to lose everything and feel like the world has forgotten you exist. Rebecca looked at him for a long moment, then set down her mop and began walking toward the elevator. Mrs. Sterling, James called after her. She turned back. Welcome to your new life. Rebecca rode the elevator down to the lobby, her heart pounding. When the doors opened, she saw an older woman sitting in one of the leather chairs, clutching a small suitcase and trying to look like she belonged there. Rebecca walked over and sat down in the chair next to her. Hi, she said softly. My name is Rebecca. I work here. Are you okay? The woman looked up, and Rebecca saw her own fear and desperation reflected in the stranger's eyes. I'm fine, the woman said, but her voice cracked on the words. No, you're not, Rebecca said gently. And that's okay. I'm not fine either. But maybe we can figure out how to be okay together. For the first time in 6 months, Rebecca Sterling felt like she might have a purpose. And for the first time in her life, she felt like she might actually be able to help someone else. Above them, James Mitchell watched from the security cameras. He'd destroyed Rebecca's old life completely, but now he was curious to see what she would build from the pieces. The homeless shelter would open in 3 months. Rebecca would run it for the next 20 years, helping thousands of people who had lost everything find their way back to hope. And every day, she would remember the lesson James Mitchell had taught her, that a person's worth isn't measured by their bank account or their address or their clothes. It's measured by how they treat other people when they think no one is watching, especially the people who can't do anything for them in return.